My name's Tony Palmieri. I'll give you a quick history lesson. Went to the University of Rhode Island, initiated the Beta Epsilon 1969. The only chapter that has produced 4, count them 4, past grade regents. Went to Georgia, became a Bulldog.
Go Dogs.
Go Dogs. I root for the Gators unless they play my beloved Bulldogs.
Go Gators.
Go Gators. They went someplace the second half last week, I don't know. I got my PhD there in pharmaceutics. Went to the University of Wyoming, and I was one of two brothers of Kappa Psi in the entire state of Wyoming. I got bored. I went to Michigan, the Upjohn Company. You know as best for Rogaine and Kaopectate. Years 1999, they merged with Pharmacia, then they bought by Pfizer. They say, Tony, you're doing a great job, but we're moving your job to New York City. I said, let's talk severance. Looked around the country, and I was lucky enough to work in technology licensing. Here, you know as best for Gatorade. 2006, I went for my performance review. The guy said, you bring in more money than anybody else, Tony. You do more licenses than anybody else. And you keep more faculty happy than anybody else, but I'm not going to renew your year-to-year contract. I said, why? He said, I just don't like you. I said, fine. Looked around the country. I decided I want to go back in academics. I was lucky enough that our previous dean, Bill Riffey, and associate dean for research, Billy Millard, offered me a job here. How many people have had me in class for biochemistry? The only C I ever got in my life was in biochemistry. The only D I got in my life was biochemistry. But I needed a job, and Riffey said, all right, we know you can teach pharmaceutics. Can you teach biochemistry? I said, sure. Luckily, he didn't ask me for it. But we got through it. We had a lot of fun. And my goal, by the way, is to get you out of here by about noon. 2015, they changed the curriculum. And I do things for 2 reasons, money and passion. Luckily, because I did a lot of expert witnessing in patent litigations, I could retire debt-free. And quite honestly, I wasn't as passionate about you folks as I should have been anymore. And so I saw the passion dwindling. I said, all right, let's go. We're going to stay in Gainesville for a number of reasons. First of all, 2 of our kids are here and 2.5 grandkids. There's one on the way, are here. And the other thing, I love living in Gainesville because of students. I went on the Alaska cruise about 1.5 years ago. I was the youngest person on the cruise. I learned more about titanium hip implants. The good Mrs. Palmieri takes a little nap. I go down to the pool to see the bathing beauties. Whoa. I'm sorry, I'll try not to be too offensive. But anyway, I'm lucky enough that the organizers asked me to talk about legacies and preserving our future. Hopefully this will be a little bit interactive because I get tired of listening to myself. A couple of things about the title. It's preserving our future and what is our legacy. Notice the way I wrote that, preserving, with the emphasis on the word serving. Those of you who have had me in class know I love to play Scrabble. That's a wonderful Scrabble word, because you can link the pre to serving, but the emphasis is on serving. The next word, our. It's not my future, it's not your future, it's our future, not only as a fraternity, but also as a profession. And it's a future. All too often, probably, when I taught the class those forms in contemporary practice. And it's nice to see people in this audience, because I used to lecture in this hall. And there were maybe 3 people in the entire hall. And they'd say, oh, but we can watch it on tape, which they could. With our distance campuses, my lectures were available about an hour afterwards. And the students would say, oh, this way we can replay it so we can give you more. They were the liars. The truth people said, we can run it at twice the speed. And so, living in Gainesville, we often run into past students, and my wife has learned to say, oh, are you related to Dr. Palmieri? And she'll say yes. And then they'll say, oh yeah, I've had him in class, and she's learned to say, did you ever go to class? The liars said yes. But my point being is, we're going to talk about our future. I don't care about the past today. Although I love the past, if you get a chance, go up to the 4th floor museum and gather in there. So let's first look at the word legacy. Legacy, as far as fraternities are concerned, is usually a brother who had a parent who was a brother, a father or a sister, or even a mother. Are any of you children of pharmacists who are Kappa Psi brothers? No? Okay, well that's fine. But that's the traditional fraternity legacy. University of Rhode Island calls me every once in a while and they say, Dr. Palmieri, we want you to leave a legacy. That's a code word for open your wallet. But I'm going to talk about that a little bit, but not much, because I want to talk about different types of legacies. There are good legacies, and you all have role models. And I'm not going to talk much about dead legacies. I'm going to talk about living legacies. Okay? But let's look at some of the legacies that people have left that hopefully you know. Do you know who Jim Valvano was? Oh my God. I was lucky enough to have breakfast with two of the national officers here, Christie and Grand Regent Letha. And they get in my truck, and Marvin's seen my truck, but picture this little 2000 Mazda pickup, okay? We didn't need seatbelts because we were all crammed in. And Bob Dylan was on the, what do you call those things? CDs. They had no idea what a CD was. But they didn't even know who Bob Dylan was, but that's fine. But Jim Valvano was a basketball coach at North Carolina State, right? Great coach, great coach. But he left a legacy because he fought cancer. And that's what people remember him for, is how greatly he fought that cancer problem. I was lucky enough to sit in most of Brother Marvin's lecture. And Brother Marvin and I are dear friends. We don't often agree, but we're dear friends. Marvin is building his legacy through pledging. And I love Brother Marvin, but he's so loud. But what's great about him is a number of things. He's so passionate. I could just see him being born, being in the womb. And his mother's 3 centimeters dilated, whatever that means. And he's saying to his mama, push! You better earn the marriage!
But it's such a disturbing image.
But my point being is Brother Marvin's leaving a legacy that will help our fraternity for a number of years. The Executive Director Emeritus, Bob McGarry, is leaving a legacy. You all, through pledging, learned about Brother McGarrian and Kappa Psi. But what you probably don't know what McGarrian's real legacy is. He lives in Norman, Oklahoma. And every year for the last 30 years, he has organized a Christmas dinner for people who are less fortunate. That's McGarrian's legacy. Okay? And there are other legacies. We have the Kappa Psi legends, like W. Harvey Smith and Cress Eldridge and those folks, and Frank Eby. They've left a legacy for us to continue, but they are static figures. People like Brother Marvin and Brother McGarrian, these are dynamic figures who are still leaving a legacy before they bite the big one. Okay? And so then the thing I really really enjoy about this is what is my legacy? And I'll give you a few examples. Kappa Psi is not in my will yet. But what I've done is when I was an undergraduate, we started what we call the drug fair, where drug companies would come and talk to students. That's still going on, and I was the 71 graduate. But it's changed. I left a legacy, but nobody there, except for Norm Campbell, knows who started it. And it was 3 Kappa Psi brothers, myself, Dave Feeney, and a guy by the name of Bob Hunter. All of us were C students because we're doing other things. But nobody cares that we're C students. Nobody remembers what we did, but it's still part of a legacy. And I continue what I do as a legacy with my time. And as Marvin pointed out, time is a lot more precious than money. Believe me, I know it real well. About 4 months ago, I was cutting my back acre with a push mower. That's one of these things you go, okay? You don't know that. But suddenly my heart murmur that they had been following said, it's time to give it some attention. So I went to the doctor. She said, you got to go to the emergency room. You're having a heart attack. I said, I drive. I'm a typical guy. If I have a cold, I think I'm going to die. But if I have a heart attack, I say, I'll take care of it sometime. Am I right? I bet that's how he is. And so I went there, and it was fascinating because of a number of reasons. What they did was they said, okay, we got 3 options. We don't do anything, you die in a year. That's not a good option. We could do open heart surgery. I don't really kind of like that because there's a long recovery time. But they have this procedure called a TAVR, transcatheter aortic valve replacement, that they do a chance. And what they do is they go through your femoral artery and put a new valve in, leaving the old one out, leaving the old one there. 2 hours out of surgery, 2 hours in surgery, I went home the next day. And I feel great. And I came out of anesthesia and I said to the people wheeling me back, am I in heaven? And they said, no, you're still on earth. The good Mrs. Palmieri said, it was rather presumptuous of you to think you're going to heaven. And when I go there, maybe he goes before me, Marvin will be there. And I want Marvin with me in heaven. Someday, not too soon, Marvin. But then I said, suppose I go with the other place. So my vision of heaven is Marvin and me having a wonderful time. And we talked about the legacy we left. And then I had this vision of hell. It's only Marvin and me. But I love Marvin. He is a wonderful person, a wonderful human being. And believe me, we have had one of the highlights when I see Marvin is we often have quiet side discussions. So there are living legacies in Kappa Psi, like Norm Campbell and Johnny Porter. Many of you who were in Denver got to see one of the highlights of my Kappa Psi experience being part of what Brother Letta called, was it Legends and Leaders or something. And what you didn't see was the conversations that people like Pat Wells and W.R. Smith and McGarrian and I had alone. We didn't say a word about what used to be. All we talked about was what we're going to do tomorrow. And that's the kind of people I want to be around. And that's the people that leave great legacies. Because their legacy is dynamic. If you've never had a chance to meet Patrick Wells, he's a wonderful, wonderful human. And I tried, although I failed, to live up to what Patrick does. Okay? So dead legacies, guys like F. Harvey Smith and Frank Eby and all those folks, they left us a wonderful foundation. But it's passive. It's not going to change. We, myself and you, we are going to be able to form what our legacy is. Okay? Now, we also have to be realistic. 50 years from now, people aren't going to remember Palmieri. They're not. Not in Kappa Psi. My grandchildren might, but in Kappa Psi, I'm going to be dead as F. Harvey Smith is to you folks. Okay, and to me. So you don't leave a legacy. The only way to leave a legacy is to live a legacy. And you have to live that legacy. And you have to do it today. You have to do it now. Okay? And it doesn't last long. W.R. Smith was a past Grand Regent, did a lot of great work. People don't really know who W.R. Smith is. I was editor emeritus. I should probably tell you a little bit about my Kappa Psi stuff. Blah, 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 blah. 1980, I have a talk with then Grand Regent Dewey Gardner. He says we need an editor. I became the second longest editor, and I'm now editor emeritus. I was editor for over 15 years. The only brother longer than me was William A. Richard Bliss, as I recall. He was editor for 40 years. Nobody knows who A. Richard Bliss was. They won't know who Palmieri was. So we make our legacy. You make your legacy. You're going to go to GCC. Old people live in Fort Myers, Florida. Their parents live in Naples. We will decrease the average age of Naples, Florida by a lot. But I've been to Naples. It's a great place. It really is. I wouldn't want to live here because there's too many old people. And what we're going to do is we're going to talk about preserving our future. And originally, I thought this was a lousy slogan. I think of preserves as like jam, jelly. But when I grew up, we would cook things and put them up. Okay? My son-in-law, who's a good old boy, nicest kind of, he's not a redneck, he's a good old boy, and there's a difference. Okay? But they put up fruits and vegetables and things like that. But I like the name, and I really thought about this a lot, and I applaud the executive committee because we're serving, and we are pre-serving, and we're preserving to make sure that we have a future. What are we doing? That is an active word, not a passive word. Okay? Now, the other thing is we're going to talk a lot about family. You've got to be a little bit careful. Okay? Because Marvin talks about coming from the ghetto. And when I joined for Kappa Psi, the first thing they said is, well, we're family. I grew up in a family where both my parents were alcoholics and my brother was a drug addict. I'm not telling you that to have pity on me. But that was the last thing I wanted to understand about family. Half of the people in college today do not live with both biological parents. And I'm not saying that's good, I'm not saying that's wrong. I would have turned out better, I think, if I didn't, quite honestly. But you have to be a little bit careful when you define family to people, okay? But we're going to talk about family and preserving the family legacy, that family being Kappa Psi. And when we think about it, we look at legacy. And you need three parts of a legacy. Now, those of you who had me in class understand that computer screen and I am not friendly. Okay? I learned to hit escape a lot of times, so I'm not going to put up a lot of words, and I don't have fancy slides like Marvin does. But I want to talk about three things. First of all, and I think Marvin alluded to this a little bit before, you have to have a vision. What do I want my legacy to be to support the legacy of my beloved Kappa Psi fraternity? How am I going to live my fraternity life and my personal life to promote and to preserve and to ensure the future of Kappa Psi and the profession? I'm going to use Kappa Psi and the profession interchangeably. Okay? Now, once you have a vision, you have to have an intent. Why am I doing this, and how am I doing it? What do I want the outcome to be? And you can't do this pie-in-the-sky nonsense. You can't say, I want to make a better life for opportunity. You've got to have a specific. That's where the drug fair analogy came in. I knew that that was a good thing to do. It wasn't a major thing, but we just changed the world an inch at a time. have passion. That's how I knew it was time to hang up the electronic pen. Because I was losing some of the passion. And it was just time to do that. But you have to have that passion. And when that passion goes away from me in Kappa Psi, and I don't think it ever will, it's time for me to say, the heck with it. I'm just going to write checks. But I'm preserving a legacy. I'm helping build that legacy. For example, the Gamma Sigma chapter here, once a year, goes up to the 4th floor of the museum and helps us there. Now they've done menial tasks. They have dusting. But I'm usually there with them, and then, so it helps build a brotherhood. It teaches them a little bit about the history of pharmacy. And then I write a little check. I don't know. There's not a comma in the check, but almost. So that's part of how I'm helping build the legacy. And you don't really often know when you build that legacy, but we're going to get back to that for a minute. So how do you leave a legacy? You leave a legacy by writing checks. I wish, candidly, more of our fraternity brothers, the graduate brothers, would do that. I think it is abysmal that we have such a poor graduate brother dues list. And we can go on forever about the reasons for that and how to change it and all, but the other way you leave a legacy is with your reputation. It has taken me 45 years to build up my reputation as a Kappa Psi brother, pharmacist, scientist, expert witness, things like that. I can lose it in a minute. I can lose it in a minute. A bad decision. What's his name? What's that? Ryan Watkins. Got a few problems. He'll get over it. I mean, he's only 31. You know, but he'll try to make it better. Bill Cosby. You can lose that reputation in a minute. Whether or not he knew about it, Joe Paterno. And that's why when I retired, some of the Gamma Sigma brothers said to me, "Oh, we want to do something. We want to have like a scholarship or something in your name." And to their credit, they didn't ask me for money. But I said, "No." First of all, I don't think I deserve it, honestly. It's a moment of self-defacement. Not very often you'll see me do that. I said, "You don't know what I'm going to do tomorrow." My daughter is a kindergarten teacher. It's a job I could never do. It's a good day if nobody pees or pukes on it. Okay? And people will say to me, she won Teacher of the Year in Alachua County last year. It was great. There was a nice check with it. But they say, "Well, you've raised such a wonderful daughter." To which I respond, "So far." John Wilkes' parents probably thought, "Hey, yeah, we raised a wonderful son." Until that little incident. Things like that. So my point being is the legacy you leave will take you a long time to build up, but you may lose it in a minute. There are good legacies and there are bad legacies. Let me give you 2 examples, and I'm not telling tales out of school, but I guess I am. When I was Grand Regent, I had to go to Ohio Northern University because they had a legacy. They had a tradition. A brother gets engaged. They strip the brother to his underwear, tie him to a tree, and smear him with peanut butter. Why did we do that? Oh, because it's always been done. It's our legacy. Those were their words. Now, not only did they do that, they had a house right across the street from the dean of students, and the tree was in the front of the house. So they were not only building their legacy, they were pretty dumb to begin with. And I pulled their charter for 5 years. Now, the good news is, Cameron Van Dyke, our editor, has rebuilt and stayed his legacy, where he has brought the chapter back. And I'm glad to see that. Okay? But you can leave a good legacy, or you can leave a bad legacy. And you probably will leave a legacy. Make sure it's good. Okay, because believe me, we don't like bad legacies. So you leave it with money, you leave it with good works, you leave it with your reputation, and you leave it with good work. And tying back again to Brother Marvin's chat this morning, the emphasis is on works. And I like the adjective good work. Most importantly, you do it with time. You share it with others. You take the time to do good. Just little things. You don't know if they're going to be anything. Just introducing yourself to another brother, or having a chat with that brother. And this is one of the things that you probably saw to some degree if you were at GCC, and you should really go to GCC, with the legends and leaders. Most of us would go and introduce ourselves to people. We didn't just expect you to know who Palmieri was or who Megarian was, because we know where in your life, in 4 years of pharmacy school, or 6 years, or whatever, it's an entire generation. They recently named the stadium. It's now called Steve Spurrier Florida Field at Ben Hill Griffin Stadium. Okay? Nobody on the team today was alive when Spurrier was a coach at Florida. Or when he was playing in Florida, not when he was a coach. He was a coach here. So they don't, time is very quickly passing. People don't remember that I was editor of the Mass. People don't remember I was Grand Regent. But the point being is, we try to give of our time. We try to not necessarily mentor brothers, but just go up to brothers and say, "Hi, my name's Tony, what's your name?" And then they'll tell me their name, and then they'll say what chapter they're from. And it's great that you use the Greek letters, but a lot of them I don't know. When I was Grand Regent, we had approximately 65 chapters. Okay? Now I can tell you who they were when I was editor in Grand Regent, but I can't tell you a lot of the newer chapters by names. I have to ask. And so you give your time, and it's in a non-judgmental manner. You give your time, and you say, "Let me hear what you want to do." My favorite question is, what's your ideal job 10 years after you graduate? Not why did you pledge Kappa Psi, but what's your ideal job 10 years after you graduate? And that's a lot of fun. And then you share that with others. You go to other brothers and say, "Oh, have you talked to Brother Giuseppe over here?" That's another thing with grandchildren. I got this 5-year-old grandchild, and he loves something called Mario, which I find personally ethnically offensive. Because there's this guy Mario, and there's this guy Giuseppe, and they're arguing, and they're fighting, and all that. But I share that with him, and he teaches me. So I learn more from pledges and collegiate brothers than I do from talking to people like Megarian and older people. And I never learn anything when I'm talking. Marvin tried to teach me something about 10 years ago. There's this phase going through called ebonics. Okay? So Marvin teaches me the phrase, "I want to get cheesy with the fajitas." Which apparently means I want to have a good time with the ladies. So I get up at night and during the banquet and I talk about this. But I said to them, "I'm learning from Marvin." I've learned a lot from Marvin. I mean that seriously. I said, he told me this phrase. And the phrase was, "I'm getting sleazy with Louise." But the point being is what I say, the other person may not hear. Okay, I didn't understand what Marvin was saying, but then he kept me from repeating it. Sometimes you don't understand, you don't hear, and you don't have the same vocabulary, like the word family. So you have to be a little bit careful when you use that as far as your legacy is concerned. Okay? So you have to share it. You have to donate money sometime, and there will be a time when you don't have any student loans. You have to share your reputation, and your reputation becomes the reputation of our beloved fraternity. The good Mrs. Palmieri hesitates to come to meetings because about 20 years ago we were in Fort Lauderdale at a hotel, and some students set off the fire alarm twice. That's her vision of Kappa Psi. Okay? So you have to control your reputation, and your reputation becomes that of the fraternity. And so you control your legacy. Let me give you a good example of another legacy. Jimmy Carter was President of the United States when I was at the University of Georgia. Jimmy Carter was not the best president of the United States. He had a lot of problems. But look at what Jimmy does now. The very fact that the guy's 80 years old and we still call him Jimmy tells you something. Okay? But now he builds houses for Habitat and Humanity. I was lucky enough, we went to Plains, Georgia, about 8 years ago. Any of you ever been to Plains, Georgia? There is nothing there except a peanut farm and one stop sign and one hotel. And Jimmy Carter's museum. You'll see Jimmy Carter's Nobel Prize. You will be lucky enough, if he's in town, to hear Jimmy Carter talk at each Sunday school. Jimmy Carter's a wonderful role model for me. He's one of the people who, and it took him decades to build his legacy. The other thing you have to do is you have to reflect. I'll be done in about, probably about 5 minutes over. The other thing you have to do is reflect. Reflect and re-energize. That's what I call it. Surprisingly, I think about things. Not very often, but I do. And I think, what did I do? How could I do better? How does it impact on you? Okay? So I reflect. And then the other thing you have to do to build a legacy and to preserve our future is you have to re-energize. And we all re-energize differently. We all re-energize differently. I re-energize by getting away from you people. I love you, but at GCC, at APHA, ASHP, I got to get away from you. It's not just Marvin I got to get away from. It's the quiet one. It's the other brothers. I just need some quiet time. And that's how I re-energize. I have dinner with my favorite person in the world. Me. But that's part of leaving a legacy. You have to be you can call it self-assured, you can call it cocky egotism, whatever you want to call it. But you have to be convinced that you are important enough and able to leave a legacy for not only our future, but our fraternity, okay? And our profession. And it's the little things that make a difference. It's the little things that leave the legacy. It truly is. And it's okay to change. We're going to talk about that for a minute. The problem at Ohio Northern University was that we've always done it this way. That's a problem. We're going to change. I don't want to do it for the next time. That's the other reason I left. I had talked about those forms in contemporary practice enough times. I had talked about biochemistry enough times. It wasn't exciting anymore. And it wasn't different. Okay? Change is okay. So then I look at my mentors in pharmacy school. And one, you know, Norm Campbell's a great mentor, great legacy. But I look at two other guys, a guy by the name of John Campoli, a guy by the name of Anthony Solomon. Both of them were Kappa Psi. Both of them were my parents' pharmacists when I was growing up. This was before CVS, and there was a time before CVS and Walgreens. They had community independent pharmacies. And they were my role models. I wanted to be like them. Just like there are people today that want to be like Marvin. Just like there are people that want to be like other brothers. And even though they didn't know it, they had created a legacy. And their legacy transported to me. Their legacy transported to me. And they didn't know it. It's just the smallest things. You know, and it's how you say it. And it's what you say. And it's how you say it. That leaves a legacy and builds that legacy to preserve our future. Your legacy is not going to be a historic one. You want to be a living legacy. Okay? Now, that's another interesting phrase. When the University of Rhode Island and the University of Georgia calls me, they say, we want you to leave a living legacy. That's a euphemism for put us in your will. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. That's not the way to do it. You will leave a legacy. It'll be good or it'll be bad. Are there legacies? Because you would not, most of you would not be here. Those brothers did not honor the past of Kappa Psi, but write their own legacy. And that's what you brothers will be doing. You will be writing your own legacy. And you're writing the legacy of my fraternity. Hopefully it'll be a good legacy. I think we honestly took a big step as a fraternity this year when we started a leadership symposium to help ensure our legacy. And I am convinced that we will have a bright future, and our future will be preserved. It'll be our future, and it will be preserved because of brothers like you. Because when I look at the future, and quite honestly, I see some brothers that say, oh, it's not like the good old days where we used to be able to paddle people. And we used to be able to smear it with peanut butter. Didn't have any girls either. Which is fascinating, because don't get me wrong, I'm pretty much for the most part a heterosexual male. You can decide which one of those is for the most part, okay? But it seems to me that I've got a lot better chance of getting a date in this room than I did if it was 1970. Okay? Or I would enjoy that date more. So, those brothers changed our fraternity for the better. They left us a legacy. But I would be willing to wager a little bit to those people who were not at GCC and saw the legends, which to me is a lot of Letha and that executive committee's legacy, because that was the highlight of the last 20 years for me in Kappa Psi. Not only talking to you people, but seeing people like Pat Wells, who I hadn't seen in a while. But they left a legacy, and they didn't know they were leaving. All they knew was they wanted to preserve and make sure we had a good future. And I am convinced, as by far the oldest person in this room, most of you are younger than my youngest daughter, who is going to be 28 pretty soon. I am convinced that our future is preserved and will be in good hands. And not only in good hands, but I go back to the crest and the figures of Kappa Psi and our emblems. I'm not only in your good hands, but I'm in the good hands of all of you. I'm in the good hands of 99 good hands.